quorum though, do we not? We have Mayor Reardon here. We have Councillor Killen, myself, so that gives us quorum. So you should be good to go.
Correct, yes.
Excellent. All right. Approval, I think we can call approval of the minutes. We can get started there.
I'll move approval.
Thank you. And seconded by, perfect. Thank you, Mayor Reardon. So approval of minutes, approval of the agenda, I would call that.
I'll move that.
Thank you,
Second.
Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. And call for any disclosures of conflict of interest, if there's any out there from committee members. Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor. Mayor Reardon. As it relates to the consent agenda, we have nothing there. And general correspondence, I don't see anything presented there. If there was any late submissions. And I do believe we have some presentations. I would remind committee before we get started. I know that staff has spent an awful lot of time preparing presentations, and this is certainly not to cause any slight on that. But if committee felt that it was unnecessary to hear any particular presentations because of the work that you've already done, the background work and the reading that's already been done, then by all means we can move forward and allow people to get on through their evening that they have. But the first presentation that we have, I would call 7.1, which is emerging electric vehicles. And it is Director O'Reilly, I believe, that is going to be presenting that one. And there is certainly going to be a presentation by a proponent that has operated a business in the community that operates such vehicles. So I'd call 7.1 Director O'Reilly.
Great, thanks, Chairperson Norton, and good evening, members of committee. I'm going to be sharing my screen now, so if you don't see it, let me know. So I'm going to give you an interesting discussion this evening around, I guess, an evolution of our roadways in St. John. So we go back about 100 years or so, in 1905, we had a bit of an evolution on the roads where before that it was horse and carriage on our streets. And then 1905 was the introduction of first, arguably the second car within St. John that started sharing roadways. In that same year, the first provincial law was created to ensure that horse and carriage can still operate safely with the introduction of the automobile. Of course, in the 1950s, we had the huge escalation of a road network to focus on cars and trucks. And of course, in subsequent years, we had the introduction of rules and infrastructure for other modes of transportation, such as walking and cycling. So we're going through a bit more of an evolution in the last couple of years, thanks to the introduction of the electric battery and electric motor. And really the discussion for this evening is how we can do our best to allow those new pieces of gear to share our roadways safely with other modes of transportation. So as you can see here, the conventional vehicles which are on our roadways these days are the cars and trucks, pedestrians and cyclists. And in terms of infrastructure, of course, you have either lanes provided or sidewalks, or in emerging cases, more bike lanes that are provided for cyclists. So the network itself is being evolved to allow this access. And the rules are also evolving as well. So of course, cars and trucks get your safety rules around, how cars have to abide by in terms of safety standards, requirements, to prevent speeding, passing, etc. Same thing for pedestrians and cyclists. There are rules in place to ensure those users are protected as they share the space with other modes of transportation. So these rules and this infrastructure has evolved over the course of time. What it always comes back to, in both in St. John and other jurisdictions, is our road safety strategy, and it all comes back to that safe roads approach. And that image on the right of the screen really dictates the different aspects of what a safe system should operate as. And certainly picking out of that, again, it's the infrastructure, the rules that are in place to make sure that different modes of transportation can share the road safely. And again, that interaction component as different modes of transportation are used. So for the last couple of years, again, that electric battery and electric motor has really started to revolutionize different modes of transportation. Of course, the vehicle itself, either partially or completely being operated instead of a gas engine by electric motor, but also bicycles, scooters, and a form of rickshaw called a tuk-tuk are also starting to become operated not by human power, but by electric batteries and electric motors. So St. John and other jurisdictions are starting to struggle with, how do we allow those different vehicles to emerge on our roadways in a safe way. So with electric bicycles, that's really, an excellent example of providing that extra mode of affordable transportation within our community. Of course, transit's used by a lot of people that can't necessarily afford a car, but electric bikes are being an excellent way to get around places. But with that type of technology, you have the greater speed and popularity on our roads compared to the human-powered bicycle, which has started to introduce particular safety risks onto our road network for other users. I do want to say that a province of New Brunswick, like other provinces, takes some leadership positions with respect to electric bikes. And essentially, as long as there are certain power limits and speed limits with respect to a certain electric bike, it acts like a bicycle, and operators of those electric bikes have to behave just like a cyclist is. So operate on the side of the road, in bike lanes, wear a helmet, etc. Bikes that exceed that power or speed limitations have to go through a pretty rigid safety requirement before they're allowed on roads within New Brunswick. Electric scooters, on the other hand, are becoming more popular as well in St. John and other jurisdictions. But unfortunately, there really are no provincial rules around the use of electric scooters. So where they should be operated, what the safety aspects of our users should be with respect to scooters. All those other forms of transportation I talked about are specifically indicated in our Provincial Motor Vehicle Act with rules under each one of those categories. But right now, there's no subcategory related to electric scooters. So there were really no safety rules that are really in place in terms of provincial rules that are in our province. The other issue with respect to scooters, and in some cases electric bikes, but certainly scooters, is there's not only personal ownership of these devices, but we're starting to see the rental market come into place. So with that, you're seeing an all of a sudden surge of scooters within a community all at one time, and being a sudden surge of use within communities. And the other issue with the rental market is the storage of these scooters between uses. So again, they don't go back to somebody's house. They typically are left somewhere within the right of way, and then the next user picks it up. So you're starting to see issues in different jurisdictions with where these devices are used. In St. John, we're starting to see the emergence of these. There's about 50 or 60 or so in the rental market within St. John. But in our sister community in Moncton, the emergence is a lot more significant. They have about 200, give or take, rental scooters operating in Moncton over the last couple of years. Moncton decided to take an approach with respect to their bylaw. Again, they can't create rules for the users of scooters because that's the responsibility of the province through the Act. But they looked at an opportunity not to regulate the users of scooters, but the companies that operate them, in terms of creating a license for those rental operators. So they have to be licensed in Moncton now. What they're working on it, they're still going through the process of their bylaw, but a licensing process, they have to provide helmets to the users. It doesn't necessarily say the users have to wear them, but rental companies have to provide them to renters, and they can actually introduce speed limits. These rental companies actually have applications that are mobile, and they're all GPS based, so they're able to actually set limits on city streets and some of their trails. So this bylaw is going through the process right now in Moncton, but again, more to do with the sudden surge in Moncton compared to what we're seeing in St. John. Electric tuk-tuks, again, there's a picture in the top right-hand corner, very similar to a rickshaw, except they're powered by some sort of motor, including an electric motor, and they do carry passengers on them. So in this case, we do have a situation in St. John. We do have a company that's been operating tuk-tuks on St. John streets and on Harbor Passage starting in the spring of this year. Again, similar situation as the scooters, where the province doesn't recognize tuk-tuks in a certain category of vehicle within their laws and ability to register the vehicle, which has been an issue for us in terms of how we identify and regulate these use of these vehicles within St. John. These are imported vehicles, so we have a question mark around their safety aspects in terms of how safe they can be used within our roadways. And again, the question as well we have to keep asking ourselves is, where do these particular vehicles belong? They're wider than a bicycle, so do they belong in bike lanes? They're slower and smaller than a vehicle, so do they belong within a vehicle lane? It's some of those questions we're pondering. The challenge we have, I guess, is with all these issues, we did find an opportunity to try to work with the company towards a path forward for their use within St. John, and that's our vehicle for hire bylaw. There's a subcategory in our vehicle for hire bylaw called sightseeing vehicles, and essentially that's what this company is providing within St. John, is a sightseeing service. So we have been working with that company throughout 2025 in an attempt to try to get them to apply for a permit through that particular bylaw, which would allow us to confirm the safety of the vehicle, safety of the operators of the vehicle, and even identify specific routes the vehicle would have to take. Unfortunately, the operator of this particular vehicle within St. John has knowingly operated this vehicle on our streets without acquiring that bylaw. So we are in the process now of taking a bylaw enforcement provision related to this particular company. So in a nutshell, where do we go from here on all aspects of these vehicles? So first of all, and I've mentioned this before, we are expanding out our road safety education plan to include specific suggestions for how e-bikes and e-scooter operators should operate in St. John safely. There's a lot of great websites. CAA actually has an excellent one on e-scooters to have good suggestions with how to operate e-scooters safely. The great thing is that the Union of Municipalities in New Brunswick has taken an advocacy position related to e-scooters and e-bikes to actually advocate the province to introduce new provincial rules within their Motor Vehicle Act related to, again, the use of e-scooters, but also e-bikes. So from a city perspective, we really don't have to do a lot in that advocacy role because UMMB has taken that position for us. But again, we hope in the future, there are going to be rules coming out to, again, dictate the use of these different electric vehicles. Because we don't have the same level of use of e-scooters in St. John as we do in Moncton, and of course the time and effort it would take to create a bylaw in St. John for the rental market, we are not recommending at this time that we do a similar process as Moncton in terms of introducing a bylaw. We're going to continue to monitor the use of e-scooters in St. John, and if it ever comes to the stage where the community impact is so severe that we think we do need to look at that, we will come back before Common Council. In terms of the tuk-tuks, again, we have a situation where the operator has refused to take a permit out and continue to operate without a permit. And we're at the stage now as city staff where we don't have the intent to continue to pursue that without operator of these tuk-tuks going forward. And with that, Chairperson, the recommendation is just to receive and file, but certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director O'Reilly. To committee members, there is a recommendation to receive and file the report, but
I'll move the recommendation, but I do have a couple of questions.
Absolutely. Okay. Moved by Mayor Reardon.
I'll second it, and I have a question as well.
Perfect. Mayor Reardon, your questions?
Thank you. So Tim, like, what is it between a motorcycle and a tuk-tuk and a motorized bicycle? Like, what is it? Is it the size of the engine, like CCs? Like, where do you change from one to the other?
Yeah. So again, part of the challenge we have is that decision as to what the tuk-tuks are in the province of New Brunswick is really a provincial decision. to make a decision at some point in time as to what it is classified as. The important thing in our situation in St. John is we had an opportunity to bypass that question whatsoever. So even though the province has not taken a position on what it's actually classified as, whether it is considered a motorcycle or what it actually is, we provided an opportunity to the owner to gain permission for use of those vehicles on St. John Street through that bylaw. So it allowed us to essentially bypass that current process of not knowing what they're classified as within the province of New Brunswick. But in terms of the physical look, I mean, you can see the pictures of them. You know, they do
Right.
carry passengers, right? They have to have a bit more big of a motor in order to carry passengers, and they're wider than the typical bicycle as well, which is some of the issues we have questions with in terms of their continued use in St. John.
And I'll say that my concern really is for pedestrians, because I'm, walking the passage, there's bikes that people are pedaling. And there's also scooters on the passage now. There's e-bikes on the passage. You can't hear them because of the electricity. They're electric. So I find them dangerous if they're coming behind you. Nobody has a belt anymore. So, we'd love to get them, the walkers would love to get them off the sidewalks and into bike lanes. And I'm sure the pedal bikes, the cyclists probably want to get them out of the bike lanes and somewhere else. So I don't know where they fit, but whenever I've traveled, the tuk-tuks have always been on the streets, never on the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Reardon. And I do believe Councillor Stewart had some questions as well.
Thank you, Chair. So I agree with a lot of what the mayor just said there, and it's obvious to me that scooters and e-bike, all of these things are becoming much more predominant. We got 50 now, Moncton's got 200, but we could have 200 next summer. We've already got a company that's promoting the rental of their e-bikes. You suggested that we don't go ahead with a bylaw at this point, but I worry, Tim, that we're going to have the problem overwhelm us before we can get a bylaw in place, because it is happening. I personally like the idea of having all of these electric scooters, including the tuk-tuks, because when I go to other cities, different forms of transportation, it's fun to tour around those cities, get different perspectives. So I welcome a lot of these, the tuk-tuks and a lot of these scooters, but we're not going to be prepared is my big concern. It's happening now. But thanks for bringing it all up now.
Any other questions from committee members?
Yeah,
Councillor,
thanks, Chair. So Tim, I'm already seeing scooters being left on random corners around the city. So, like, can you kind of explain to me how this works? I like, do they go pick them up, or are there trackers on them? Like, they're kind of thrown about.
Yeah, so again, what they're doing in Moncton is they're identifying locations where they're allowed to be placed between rental opportunities, and that's an obligation on the rental company to be able to do that. So again, they have seen a greater issue in Moncton because of the usage before the bylaw was implemented, or without the bylaw in place, by being parked on sidewalks and in green spaces, etc. So again, they have taken the position as part of their bylaw to identify certain locations where they are allowed to be parked. I guess to your point and everybody's point, take it for sure. Like, we do have that risk that it could escalate and fairly quickly, similar to Moncton. It is really just a matter of work planning, right? First of all, we'll need legal support in St. John to develop this bylaw. And then after it's implemented, you have to service it, right? Enforce it, administer it, etc. It all comes with a cost. So I do take everybody's point for sure that, this could come on us pretty quickly in St. John as well. I guess the good thing is we've been talking very close with Moncton, so we'll be able to work with them in terms of what they've developed, to likely develop ours a lot quicker than theirs. But I take that risk to heart for sure, that there is that risk could be there, that it could escalate pretty quickly in St. John too.
And in terms of right now, I've actually never walked up to one of these scooters and read what's on them. Is there a way for us to at least kind of communicate like what you're supposed to do if you see one? Because I, hate that they are kind of blocking sidewalks right now and in precarious places. So I don't know if there's like some kind of communication around like, do you call someone? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it is two companies in St. John. I believe they have the company names on the scooters themselves, if you go up and
Okay.
take a look at it. And they all have the QR code right on them to be able to log onto the site. So yeah, anybody could really find out pretty quickly which of the two companies that particular scooter belongs to. And certainly, I'm sure they provide good customer service and will deal with complaints in the interim.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Killen. Councillor Ogden?
Yeah, Tim, I was talking to somebody who thought that Moncton started before us. That might be why there are higher numbers. But he also said they have more younger people, far more university students than we have. And he didn't know. And then I asked him about the hills. So if it's that they started before us, we might get hit all of a sudden because now everybody sees them all around. I haven't any complaints or anything, but if it is the reason that they have younger population in Moncton because of the university students and all that, we might not see as big increase. And I don't know about the hills if they play a role or not. When we're paying on Main Street, you see them going up and down there, but that's not a really steep hill. I'm just thinking like Chipman Hill and those places, you would never see them. So why is Moncton so far ahead of us on this?
It's the private organizations that decide to set up in a certain market, so whatever organizations looked at Moncton, they would have seen, a larger market to enter into for whatever reason. That would be a decision of that business to do so. So I can't particularly answer that. But no, as everybody said, the opportunity's there for more to show up in St. John next year and subsequent years as well. But yeah, again, as I mentioned earlier, the currently it's at least twice, if not three times, the amount of rental units that are in Moncton compared to St. John. So the issue is certainly greater in St. John, but
I'd be interested in knowing why that Moncton's growing faster in this area than we are. If you ever come across it.
Thank you, Councillor Ogden, for the questions. Seeing no further questions, I would call for receive and file. All in favor? There we go. Don't see any nays there, so we'll consider that received and filed. Thank you, Director, for putting that together. I do believe we have 7.2, but hearing from the chief, I'm not sure if Mr. Devlin is here this evening or not as it relates to Stevie Gogo and his presentation that he submitted.
Yeah, Chair Norton, Assistant Deputy Robichaud reached out and it hasn't got a response. I resent the link as well. And I just checked and I don't see him in attendance this evening.
There we go. Maybe we can pass along our thanks for the presentation that he submitted. And given his absence, we'll continue along quickly with the agenda. Standing committee reports. There is nothing in Section 8, Service Review Safety Assessment. So that leads us right to Section 9, which is Standing Committee Reports. And first out of the gates, Jill DeMerchant has a report for us for 2025 Speed Cushion Program. So we thank her for bringing that report to us. Over to you.
See that? All right. Thank you, Chair and committee and council members for having me today. I'm excited to provide you an update on our 2025 Speed Cushion Program.
It is a topic of conversation on our street, so this is one that we can all relate to. So feel free to go slow.
Was my mic muted that whole time? I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. You're doing
okay.
Great.
Okay, perfect. All right, so thanks. Yes, great. So going to give you guys kind of a background on the program itself and then dive into our 2025 program, as you said, hot topic around the city, and then get into our plans for next year. So the Speed Cushion program itself is certainly grounded by goals from Move SJ to improve the safety and accessibility of our streets for all mode users. Traffic calming itself is kind of a hot topic for our city as well. I provided a definition from the Transportation Association of Canada, which essentially says, traffic calming is a combination of physical measures that we can provide to reduce negative effects of motor vehicle use, typically speeding, which helps alter driver behaviors to improve safety for all users of our streets. And statistically speaking, when we reduce operating speeds, which is a goal of traffic calming, we can expect reductions in the frequency of serious and fatal collisions, decreases in the severity of collisions when they do occur, and as well as improved safety for all road users, including those vulnerable road users, pedestrians and cyclists. So over the past 5 or so years since COVID essentially began, we've seen an uptick in community interest in traffic calming. So as you can see here in this diagram, after 2020, there was certainly a rise in requests coming from the community for traffic calming measures. And though it has reduced slightly, there's still certainly more coming in than were coming in historically. And we saw the need to do something to address these rising concerns. So our response was implementing the expedited traffic calming program, which has been implemented in phases over the past few years, and was adopted by both the Public Safety Committee and Common Council. Was first presented in 2022. 2023, we implemented the speed cushions on one street on the east side. And then in 2024, we expanded that to 4 streets. Essentially, the program allows us to scale back the steps in our traffic calming policy, which enables us to produce faster results and to get out and address these community concerns a little bit quicker. So the program uses speed cushions as our go-to traffic calming solution. So it's essentially when we see that traffic calming is warranted on a street, speed cushions is our answer, as long as the street is appropriate, is an appropriate candidate. And we use a data-driven approach to identify the locations. So we collect data, confirm that speeding is occurring on the street, and then we can justify the implementation. So this is just some visuals to, I'm sure you guys all know what a speed cushion looks like now, but just to show the different options for vertical deflection traffic calming measures. So up in the top left corner, we have the typical speed bumps that you would see in parking garages, in parking lots. Speed humps in the middle. These are very similar to speed cushions, but they extend across the entirety of the roadway from curb to curb. And then, of course, our speed cushions, which have gaps between the cushions to allow for larger vehicles like fire trucks, ambulances, buses. It allows them to pass over the cushion without feeling that vertical deflection as you would in a smaller passenger vehicle. So getting into our 2025 speed cushion program, last year Council approved an additional $450,000 in our operating budget to enable the expansion of the program from 4 streets in 2024 to 14 streets in 2025. This was a one-time chunk of money that would enable us to get out and address some of the concerns from the public. So we actually identified 12 streets to complete in 2025. There's 14 streets listed here because 2 of the streets, Heather Way and McLaren Boulevard, were streets that already had the speed humps on them, but they were being resurfaced this year as part of the asphalt resurfacing program. So instead of reinstating the speed humps, we opted for the speed cushions on those streets. So that's our list of streets. The street selection was based on a combination of community requests, as I said, for traffic calming. And then subsequent to that, we took that list of streets, priority streets from the community, collected data on those streets to validate where speeding was actually occurring. And then the streets where we were seeing the speeding, we selected for the program this year. In terms of implementation, this year, cushions on 4 of the 14 streets were constructed by city forces. And then on the remaining 10 streets, the cushions were constructed by a contractor through the asphalt resurfacing program. And in terms of the design and location selection, we followed the same practice as we followed in previous years, which aligns with national best practices and the design detail that is used and was provided by the City of London. So this slide provides some results from the implementation of the cushions. So we had city staff deploy equipment out on 4 of the streets that had cushions installed on them to measure the speeds after implementation. We already had the speeds from before, so we were able to compare the average speeds on the street, and the results speak for themselves. We saw a significant reduction in vehicle speeds. The average speed across all 4 streets decreased by an average of 9.5 kilometers per hour, which obviously is the result we were looking for, so that's great. Something else that we noticed that I think is important to take note of is the change in daily volume before and after the cushions were implemented. So on some streets, like Churchill Boulevard, for example, you can see here, we saw higher reductions in daily volumes, and we suspect that that's because there's alternate routes in the area that motorists can use to avoid the street if they don't want to be going over the cushions. So we suspected that could be a very plausible reason why we see that decrease in daily volumes. And then in other areas like Milford Road, where there's not necessarily an easy alternate route, we didn't see that. We actually saw a slight increase in volume. So that's something that we definitely need to consider in the future when we're selecting streets, because we don't want to be moving traffic necessarily to an alternate street if that street isn't suitable for that. So a little bit about what we've heard. I'm sure you've all heard things. The biggest concern I think that has come in is a concern that low-profile vehicles are scraping or bottoming out on the cushions. So in response to this, we had staff go out and measure the height of the cushions, and we were able to confirm that the heights do not exceed the acceptable height tolerances from best practices. Though we did notice that there is some variability in the height between different cushion installs. This is particularly when you compare street to street. On one street, we did note that the cushion heights were pretty consistent, but from one street to another, you have different crews working on different streets. We did see some variability in height. So the range that we were seeing was 2.5 inches to 3.5 inches. And certainly this can change drivers' expectations when coming coming across a cushion, so something that we would like to address in the future. So our plan to address this is to establish a narrower range for height tolerances for future installs. So our recommendation would be to narrow that range to 2.5 to 3 inches. And we feel that that would provide, you know, a sufficient range for constructability. You know, these things aren't the easiest thing to install, so we have to provide a little bit of flexibility there for the people that are out installing them. But we also want to make sure that there's consistency across the board when you come up to a cushion. So for the 2026 program year, our intention is to return to the construction of speed cushions on 4 streets. And again, these will be identified using that same data-driven approach. We haven't identified the streets yet, but we plan to start data collection very soon and get those streets identified. And the construction of these would be funded through the annual budget allocation for traffic safety improvement projects. And with that, our recommendation is that Public Safety Committee recommend to Common Council that the city continues the rollout of the traffic calming program via the use of speed cushions, including the installation of cushions on 4 additional streets in 2026. And that's the end of my presentation.
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Norton, you're muted, or Chair Norton.
There we go. I'll answer to a variety of names today, Councillor. Thank you very much for seconding that motion. And all in favor? Councillor
Can I ask a
Ogden,
question?
I do see some questions there. Councillor Ogden, I see your hand, your virtual hand.
There's people that stop me that swear that they're not all the same height. And I wonder, you know, if they're driving different vehicles and all that. But Jill, you just pointed out that they are all the same height.
No, so there's a range. It's about an inch difference in certain areas. On one street, they're pretty close to the same height. If you're traveling down Wellesley Avenue, for example, you would expect them all to be the same height. But yeah, just where, you know, the constructability is not the easiest. And this is a new thing for our staff and for contractors. There is a little bit of like variance with the different streets, the cushions on the different streets. But again, they are within that acceptable tolerance. So we wouldn't expect people, if they're traveling the appropriate speed, to be scraping the bottom of their vehicles.
The other question I have is, I've had requests more than 4 for 4 different streets. I've usually sent them into Tim. So I don't know if doing 4 is enough. I'd like to see us do more than 4. I know people will come up to you and say, we got to get rid of the speed bumps, et cetera, et cetera. And then I say, well, you know, the data shows that they do slow down traffic. And one of the biggest problems we have, according to the public, is they want us to slow traffic down. And then they'll just say, you know, put more police in the street. And I said, well, that's not very economically efficient to be doing that. So then they'll, you know, if you just let them sort of get angry a little bit and then say, well, how would you slow the traffic down? And then a lot of them come around. But I do tell them that, you know, we have people who are really concerned about speeding traffic. But I think we should do more than 4, just from the requests that I've gotten for people who are concerned. I find that the people who want the traffic slowed down aren't as vocal as the people who don't like the speed bumps. But I think there's more people that like the traffic slowed down than that don't like the speed bumps.
Thank
you.
you.
I would recommend that we do more than 4.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ogden. We'll just stick with the recommendation. That's something that we can always visit at at a later meeting. But moving on, I'm not sure who was in the queue first. Councillor Stewart, we'll take you, and then we'll go to Mayor Reardon.
Thank you, Chair. Just to Barry's point there, I've definitely got lots of feedback on these speed bumps. And I'm also, I know one of our engineers who is specifically responsible for going out and measuring these speed bumps. And he has done it, and I've seen some of the data. It's clear to me that they're working. They don't work so well for bigger vehicles like half-ton trucks. We can clearly get over those very easily, but for the majority of the smaller vehicles, they definitely work. The ones on Churchill Boulevard are a good 3/4 to 1 inch higher than they are on Douglas Avenue, and that's been measured. But with a few more cars hitting those and bottoming out, it's shaving off a little bit. So they're being lowered. And I guess my question is, how are I can see by the data they're working. That's excellent. But how are our plows going to fare with these over the winter? And are we expecting a little bit of wear and tear and a little decrease in height because of that? Jill?
So that's a good question. So we've gone through a couple of winter seasons with the cushions that, well, McNamara was installed in 2023, and then we had a couple of other streets 2024. The cushions themselves are constructed by keying into the asphalt. So they're not just sitting on top of the asphalt, they're actually like placed inside of the asphalt, and they become part of the road surface. So we don't necessarily have a concern about the plows peeling up the asphalt of the cushions. But certainly, like, I can't really comment on whether they'll get pushed down. I don't know. I wouldn't expect a ton of movement, but
Okay.
I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart.
I like them. I like them.
Over to you, Mayor Reardon.
Thank you. Jill, the only thing I love them as well. I've noticed a big difference in the speed, of course, and I drive Churchill Boulevard, but one thing, and I sent Tim the pics, but when I was away, and you've been to Europe as well, they use a speed cushion there, and they flatten it out, and they use it as a crosswalk, which is nice because it creates that accessibility from sidewalk to sidewalk. There's no down, but it's wider, but it has that same height. So it's just, I sent him the pic. So something to think about as we go forward, because it does two functions then. But keep it up with the speed cushions. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for all the questions from committee to our municipal engineer. And I will call the question. All in favor?
I still have another question.
Councillor Ogden, if we can get right to the motion.
I would like us to look at more than 4, please. I know I'm on the street every day and I listen to people.
Thank you. No,
Councillor
Ogden, we have recorded that. We've heard that in the last.
But Councillor Norton, you told me we're staying at 4, and I would like my opinion.
Yeah, we heard that in your previous comment, Councillor, that you want to see more than 4 streets. We've heard that. And we've captured that in the minutes. So that.
But you just said that you're staying to 4.
No, Councillor, the motion is recommending 4 more streets in 2026. That's the motion. We're debating the motion. In your previous comment, you've already cited the fact that you want to hear
but you
more than 4
my
streets.
comment.
You want to see more than 4 streets. So if there's anything new you want to bring to the discussion, happy to hear. But in the absence of that, we are going to call the question. Okay, all in favor? Perfect. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on, we're going to call 9.2 road speed reduction options, and I believe Director O'Reilly, your center stage this evening. We'll bring you out to present that report. There is a recommendation, folks. I'll have you keep in mind it is just receive and file. But over to you, Director.
Great, thanks, Chairperson again, and essentially my report picks up where Jill just left off. Just talk a bit more broadly about, again, our overall efforts to slow streets in St. John, go a bit beyond the speed questions in terms of some other strategies we're looking at. There's really two messages I want to provide with this presentation. I guess number one, the issues with speeding are caused by many different factors, so the solutions we have to put in place need to be varied as well. And number two, and Jill picked up on this in her presentation, is that, you know, when you do something different, there are people that like the results and people that are concerned with the results. And certainly if you look across Canada and beyond, different measures that are used to slow people down, you get the positive responses and the concerns with doing so. Again, so just make sure that we're aligned with committee and of all council with some of the directions we're headed in. So what's up on the screen here right now is just, again, the different factors that really do influence speed. They're varied. You know, people live busy lives. That's reality. People are trying to get from point A to point B. You need to respect that. But beyond that, there are a lot of other characteristics that impact how fast people drive, from the how cars were constructed all the way to, of course, the way our streets are designed and everything in between. So again, that just gives credence to the fact that we need to make sure that the solutions are varied. So St. John's Road Safety Strategy, which we're in the, we have the initial implementation already in place, but very similar to other road safety strategies. Again, focus on different streams of slowing vehicles down. That's called the 3 E's of transportation safety. So the education side, if we can convince people that driving slower is the right thing to do, and what the causation is if they do drive too fast is an important part. And then again, that's been rolled into our road safety education plan. Enforcement will also always be an important factor. And that's why we always work closely with our St. John Police Force when there are speeding issues in our community to see if enforcement is the best options in some cases. But we always have to look at the streets themselves, how they're designed, how they're constructed. In the case of Jill's presentation, sometimes how we have to look at modifying the street to make sure that people are driving at the speeds we want people to drive at. We do have a St. John traffic calming policy, first adopted in 2012. Has some tweaks over the years, which we'll get into. But really, it's a St. John solution developed by city staff, and we're very proud of it. And it's lasted, you know, for more than 15 years with a few tweaks along the way. The policy itself, you know, verification of speeding is always important. You know, we do find it's about a 50-50 split. Concerns from the community, about 50% of them, people are actually speeding, and the other 50%, the speeding is actually in acceptable levels and don't require the need for traffic calming. It is a very comprehensive and consistent process we have in place, and again, the range of measures can be varied depending on the application. And again, it does touch on both the planning aspect, so when streets are developed, as well as the proactive steps in street building as well. It has a prioritization system in place, so we make sure that whatever streets we deal with first for traffic calming, deal with the most, you know, severe situations in St. John in terms of what the best bang for the buck essentially for creating implementation measures. We have improved the policy over the years. Proud to say we get 17 elementary middle schools around St. John. Every single one of them have different traffic calm measures associated with them, and we've worked with the schools and in some cases the parent support committees to put those measures in place. Went through a critiquing period as part of Move SJ. We did see some improvements as a result of that, including the introduction of the speed cushions as a result of Move SJ. We're continuing to improve our data gathering opportunities and equipment to make sure that we have accurate speed and volume data to justify our decision making. A few years ago, we started looking at reducing the speed limits on some streets in St. John. I would say it was a varied success in terms of actually getting vehicles to slow down. Just in the last couple of years, we did update the policy to talk to add some prioritization for more vulnerable communities. Both people with disability needs, and in some cases, people who are elderly within our community, and that's all based on using StatsCan data. And again, as I mentioned, we're always working with the St. John Police Force. So in years past, and St. John's not the only place that does this. You know, in most engineering streams, you always put a factor of safety in place. You know, for soils engineering, mechanical engineering, you design it and then you put a factor of safety in place. Well, over the course of time, different jurisdictions have done this with road design. So you typically build a road wider and more susceptible to speeds that are greater than what the expected speed limit is. The challenge with doing it that way is that when you build streets wider and more, give more aptitude for people to drive faster, people are going to drive faster. That's the resulting input. So we've done a lot of work over the years when we're rebuilding our streets to incorporate traffic calming, whether it's road narrowing or other implementation within the capital jobs. If we're going to rebuild the street, we might as well make them safer at the same time. And again, some of the examples are up on the screen here now. Working very closely for new developments. So if a new street's going to be built as part of a development, let's look at these streets and how they're being designed in the development to make sure it's done safely. And we've had examples of that over the course of a number of years as the city continues to grow. And as I mentioned, we're moving, instead of designing for larger speeds or bigger speeds in the speed limit, we're designing to the speed limit instead. Joe mentioned already the increasing requests, and we need to be able to respond to that. And as Joe mentioned in her presentation, big effort over the last couple of years on more focus with respect to speed cushions. Again, it's that opportunity to provide rapid results, knowing that other measures, including street rebuilding, can take years to do because of the cost of rebuilding a street completely. So we really, last couple of years, respond to that growing concern in our community by having, again, these speed cushions in place as a go-to measure. In addition to engineering a road, we're getting into the discussion about enforcement as well. And again, our St. John Police Force plays that role in terms of enforcing speeds. But we do have an opportunity in New Brunswick now. The province of New Brunswick has introduced, and they call it image capturing enforcement, is what they call it in the province. They call it different things across the country. But it does introduce the opportunity to introduce photo radar, to enforce speeding, and even red light cameras to enforce running of red lights at intersections. So as I mentioned, it is in place now where municipalities in Brunswick can implement image capturing enforcement. Again, the real benefit there is that it supports and supplements limited police officers that can only do so much in terms of doing speed enforcement. It works. When you look across Canada, the national statistics, where they implement image capture enforcement, they see speeds reduced anywhere from 8 to 14 kilometers per hour. Again, as impressive as the results that Jill just presented with respect to our speed cushions. Common Council has not been asked yet to adopt image capture enforcement. I'm going to get into a second. We're doing a process now of working with the Regional Services Commission to look at the business case for image capturing enforcement. What we know right now is that the province of New Brunswick is not agreeing to provide revenues introduced as a result of any type of traffic enforcement, including this. So we're in the process of working with the Regional Services Commission to find out if there's other benefits, what other benefits there are besides the revenues coming in to offset the cost of image capturing enforcement. So that work is being done right now as we speak. The real opportunity for image capturing enforcement, believe the staff, is to have that solution for busier streets. Speed cushions are likely going to be the solution for lower volume neighborhood streets to deal with neighborhoods. This is likely going, if council adopts it, is likely going to be the solution for busier streets. So as I mentioned, like I said, the fine revenues do not come back to municipalities right now, but the Regional Services Commission is in the process of completing that business case, comparing the full range of benefits besides the potential for revenues. Can we see reduction in police officers need to put attention on speeding? What are the safety improvements on our roads? What other traffic calming measures do we not have to rely on and invest in if we can implement image capturing investment? All those benefits are being compared to what the actual cost is going to be for municipalities to both introduce this technology, but also the administrative costs over the course of time. And we expect that back within the next couple of weeks. So in a nutshell, these different solutions go hand in hand and can complement each other in different circumstances. So again, the speed cushions are that go-to solution to respond to the recent concerns we've been seeing over the last couple of years. Much more of a rapid response. We can do a lot more quickly. Rebuilding a street is an opportunity to have a more holistic view of traffic calming and introduce that within a street design. But again, it's slower implementation because we only do a handful of streets for full rebuild every single year. As I mentioned, speed cushions are likely a good candidate for lower volume neighborhood streets, whereas image capture enforcement, if we adopt it, would likely be a good option for arterial streets. And again, all these different solutions are all encapsulated within the city's overall road safety strategy. So as I mentioned, both in St. John and other jurisdictions where you do introduce measures to slow people down, you're going to have the benefits of the community members that requested it, and improvement in safety for a community. That's hands down. And like I said, we only look at solutions that are going to be known to be solutions to actually slow people down. But on the other hand, we do have some concerns in St. John and other jurisdictions where they don't like the implemented solutions. So we always have to consider those different feedback and make sure that we're still aligned, that the overall approach is slow people down, make it safe for St. John streets. So with that, again, Chairperson, that's my report and receive and file recommendation, and can answer any questions committee may have.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. And do I have a seconder?
Councillor Killen.
Councillor Killen, there we go. Any questions from committee before we call the question?
I don't have a question, but I'll say quickly that, yeah, there is mixed feedback, but when it impacts you directly, it changes. So we got to keep going with what we're doing, I think. Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
Just to add something here is, if I could just add something, Chair.
Absolutely.
So I'm torn with a lot of this, because the irony is that we realize we need to slow people down for safety reasons, but the world around us is speeding up all the time, whether it be internet or jobs, or just everybody's in such a hurry to get everywhere. And it becomes a much more dangerous society all over. I think that we're taking all the right steps here in our city. It does frustrate a lot of people, okay, because it does slow them down. But I think in the long run, it's absolutely necessary, and we are heading in the right direction. So good job, Tim, Jill, everybody. Good job.
Thank you, Director O'Reilly. I'll call the motion, and thank you to committee members for your thoughtful feedback on the presentation. All in favor? There you go. I'd say that's unanimous. Thank you, Director, for the presentation, and we look forward to that multi-pronged approach coming forward to a street near you. So we'll call the next presentation closed circuit TV in the Waterloo Village area. I believe it's a verbal update, and the presenter is Chief Bruce. It's 9:3. So the chief with us this evening. There he is, Chief Bruce. Yes. Welcome to committee, and we look forward to the verbal update. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so there's about 3 pieces to this, but the initial piece that the St. John Police implemented along with our partner Forest Green with things that we have in place now is the Safe Neighborhood Camera Registry, which, as everybody's aware, had already been announced some time ago, early in November, where you can hook up your outdoor cameras, link them into what we can access. We don't have to go to your door as long as you give us permission to access your camera. Outside facing cameras, we're not interested in any inside facing cameras. That doesn't cost anybody anything. And then we can, instead of knocking on your door when we have a crime or something in an area, we can retrieve that video and use that for investigative purposes. So that's in place now. We have 85 people so far, business and private residents, mostly private residences that have opted into that, but that's early on. It's an education piece, and it's a really good investigative tool for us, and it saves time as well because we can go right into that right away. But it's not an on-time thing. Like, we can't kind of catch you in the act of something. It's an after process. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is the New Brunswick Association of Chiefs of Police have sent a letter to the Minister of Public Safety requesting a provincial crime prevention rebate for small businesses and homeowners that participate in crime prevention initiatives. So whether it's putting film on your windows, bars, cameras, whatever the case may be, we're asking, lobbying the government to assist us in crime prevention by providing a rebate across the province for, and they'll have to figure, you know, what size or whatever or how much, but small businesses and private residents to enhance their security. As we all know here, you know, crime prevention, law enforcement is a partnership. And so we're trying to partner with the province on that, to partner with our communities to enhance crime prevention, which, you know, really we talk about prevention, reduction, and apprehension, right? So on the apprehension side, the Safe Neighborhood Camera Registry is really good. On the prevention side, we're looking at the rebate that we're asking the provincial government to do instead of downloading that all the time on municipalities. And then thirdly, what we're here for is to seek kind of through the Public Safety Committee, St. John Council pursuing CCTV cameras as a partnership between police, our community members, and the city, and potentially the province funding this. So what this would be strategically place CCTV cameras in Waterloo Village and Uptown St. John, which would be live. So we get a live feed into the police station. If we had an incident going on a certain street, we would be able to go to that right away, give live information to our officers on the street. Because if you think about it, just think of you've had a crime or something that you're reporting to the police. Let's use an impaired driver, for instance. If you're driving down, you know, Highway 7 or 2 or 1 or whatever you are, or a street, by the time you call that in, that is already gone. By the time we get it, it's gone. It's already ahead of you, right? It's well ahead of you. So this would give us on time, on target vision of what's going on in the street. It's a program that they piloted in Charlottetown, PEI, and it's a partnership between the police who monitor this, the city, and private industry, which is all the community partners. It doesn't cost the city anything. It's basically they get about $2 million in donations a year to run the cameras, and the police monitor it. So there's some ability for us to do the on-time thing. And it's really a partnership between the community. And again, it's about crime prevention, reduction, and apprehension, especially in our uptown. We often hear, as you do probably as much as I do, from our businesses about, you know, the issues that they have in uptown. We often hear about, you know, the issues that are in Waterloo Village. We can do so much of that. Our QRT is doing amazing things up there, as you know, and uptown's getting quite a bit more. This year so far, we did over 180 foot patrols in Waterloo and uptown businesses. So, but that is restricted to, bodies on the street. So what we're asking for Public Safety Committee is further this to council, the CCTV camera partnership with private industry, the city, and the police to move forward on this, where we could strategically place cameras, put them on St. John energy poles, and maybe the city pays for the electricity for the year. And maybe the private companies pay for the, the cameras, and the police monitor it, and so on and so forth. But that's really what we're looking for here. I'm just presenting this as an opportunity for, public safety to move this forward to the to council to review, take a look at what they've done and the success they've had in Charlottetown, because I think it's a very good program. You don't have to reinvent the mousetrap. You just have to make a better one, right? So that's my presentation, Mr. Chair, and I'm willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief Bruce, for the presentation. There is a recommendation. I believe it must be receive and file the verbal update. I did want to acknowledge Chair Kelly this evening. That's with the chief. So thank you both for coming. Any
So,
questions?
no, I was just going to ask you, Mr. Chair, is it receive or file, or is it to refer it to council for consideration?
Yeah, Chief, is there a recommended recommendation, I should say, from you and commission?
Yeah, so I think what the recommendation would be to forward this to council, to have a look at staff, to look at the feasibility of this with a view of looking at how Charlottetown implemented it, where the cost was borne mostly by private industry and it was a bigger partnership.
Perfect. Just a quick question to CAO or Chief Nickel. Do you need any more clarification as it relates to the recommendation for committee to consider, so that we can do as the chief has recommended here?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think maybe a referral to the CAO so that we can get specifics and prepare a report for council's consideration with appropriate recommendations may be best.
Okay,
Sounds good. I'll make that referral or recommendation.
thank you, Mayor Reardon. Do I have a seconder for that?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for that. On the question, any questions for the chief or Chair Kelly? Oh, okay, seeing none. Thank you both for being here this evening in the good collaborative work that you're doing as it relates to this. And we look forward to the CAO bringing forward a report as it relates to this presentation to public safety. All in favor? Yeah, perfect. Motion carried. Moving on to the next, 9.4 fire protection bylaw update. And I do see for that one, we have Deputy Chief LeBlanc is the primary author for that, with a well-equipped team behind him. So over to you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you for the motion, Chair. Sorry for the chuck. I'll take my glasses off here. All right, hopefully I'm going to get this here done right with my share. I'll do this very quickly, a presentation, and hopefully you're seeing my presentation now.
We are.
So the purpose of this report to you today is to present you an update to the bylaw respecting fire protection service in the city of St. John. It's a bylaw that's been around since 2012, and it was a bylaw that back in 2012 was created because of the Official Languages Act back in 2005. A bunch of bylaws got repealed, replaced, some were updated. This one here was put to the side for review and update, but in 2012 it was created, and in 2013 we appointed a bunch of people under the bylaw to enforce the bylaw. Well, right now we're down to one person who can enforce that bylaw. So that was a trigger to review the bylaw. And again, that bylaw was created under the Municipalities Act. So basically, why are we updating it? Well, to grant authority to people current and staff. And actually, the authority in this bylaw is very similar to the authorities granted by the fire marshal to a local assistant under sections 7, 11, 12, 13, and 16 of the Fire Prevention Act. So it mimics that, and that's the way it's sort of written right into the local Governance Act under section 186. But unlike other bylaws, just for more of an information purposes, any appeals to this bylaw are heard by the fire marshal. So why the update? New titles. And we also wanted to add an administrative penalties section to the offenses and penalties. And because we're touching the bylaw, and it was written under the old Municipalities Act, we're updating it to the local Governance Act. Okay, so for new titles, in 2025 or this year, we created Assistant Deputy Chief. And in order to appoint that person as a fire prevention, as appointed under the bylaw to enforce it, we'd like to have the title added to the bylaw. So that's housekeeping. And then administrative penalties. That's something we wanted to add because we did have a penalties and offenses, which were like a section D or E offense under the PAPA. So under administrative penalties, we're just saying that any person who violates any provision of this bylaw may pay to the city within 45 calendar days from the date of such violation an administrative penalty of $500. And upon such payment, the person who committed the offense is not liable to be prosecuted, but are still required to fix the repairs. And basically, if they didn't do it within the 30 days we gave it, we probably give them another ticket, then another one, another one. So the whole concept of this adding administrative penalties is to sort of to finish the bundling of the 5 E's of fire prevention. And the 5 E's, are engineering, enforcement, education, economic, and of course, emergency response. And right now, we don't have a real economic statement. So this is the beginning of an economic statement in the pillars of fire prevention. And the whole idea was right now, the way a lot of property owners are, if I spend money fixing that door and making the self close, or I fix that hole in the wall, or fix that shoddy electrical panel, or even bother to call and get my fire alarm system retested, it's money out of their pocket, it's less profit. So this is sort of a counter way of saying, well, pay me now or pay me later. So it's more about, well, you can either get fines or penalties, or you can invest in your own property. So we're trying to create that economic statement to invest into yourself, which is in the bylaw now through offenses and penalties, but it's go to court. All right, so that's the wrong way. And of course, the last thing is to align with the Local Governance Act. And basically Section 186 of the Local Governance Act is pretty much the same as Section 109 of the Old Municipalities Act. So it's housekeeping. So the next step is, if you so agree, we will take this report to Common Council to recommend an updated bylaw. And if that bylaw is so enacted, it'll be like a repeal and replace. We'll do a recommendation to Council for appointees under this bylaw. The recommendation is receive and file. And if there's any questions, I will gladly answer your questions.
Thank you, DC LeBlanc. And I know we have some questions from committee members. We do have a recommendation. Would anyone like to move that? And we can call the question.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor Reardon. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for that. Questions on the report that we received. Councillor Ogden, I see your hand, please.
Thank you for that report. One thing I'd like to see the fire department do is more education. I come across a lot of people, especially seniors, who don't know their rights. Yeah. And we have an enormous amount of slum landlords in the city and a very, very high poverty rate. One of the highest in the country with some of the oldest housing. And there are people that don't know their rights. And I would like to see, because when you're out in the street and you're helping people, we've replaced 4 doors this year that should have never been in that situation. But people were intimidated by the slum landlord. Mm-hmm. And so, then you spend your time educating people what they can complain about and have fixed. So one thing I'd like to see the fire department do is to educate more. I mean, I know that you work sometimes with the bylaw officers, but we do have a lot of people living in very, very shoddy situations in St. John. And some of the slum landlords own 20, 30, 40 buildings. Yep. And I think it would be easy to identify.
I want to remind you of how much time you have. I believe that DC LeBlanc has your concern as it relates to more education. That you want him to respond to that, I would suggest we get on with that. But it's a good point. But I just want to respect everybody's time here. Here's your concern regarding more education as for this bylaw, and maybe he can speak to that. But it is a good question. I just want to be more succinct in our questioning here this evening.
Well, I thought I was very succinct. I'm on the street every day. I see it. And we do have very few opportunities to meet as council. So I think that we do have to air what the public says. I don't miss any meetings. I'm there all the time. So
thank you.
I do want my voice known.
Thank you, Councillor. Let's allow DC LeBlanc to respond to your question.
It's a very valid question, and it's very true. We do try to get out. Public education is a big component of what we do. We probably dedicate when you think of our workload, 2 solid months or more a year in different forms of public education. The question is, can we do more? The answer is always yes, and we can do more through different medias, which we have to start doing in conjunction with our communication group. But we do try to get out to those groups, like the seniors and renters. Now we're a little weak lately on getting out to some of the apartment buildings because we've had a number of retirements and we're trying to rebuild staff. So to Councillor Ogden's concern, we are a little behind on getting into some old buildings. But this time next year, though, we will be, because we're training new staff right now.
Thank you, DC LeBlanc, for that. We know that education and public communication is a part of what we do at City Hall and a part of your department, so we look forward to that continuing. Mayor Reardon.
Thank you, Chair. In reference to this bylaw, I just want to say I love the admin penalties. People often do know what they're supposed to do, but feel they can get away with things. So I love that component of it. Thank you very much. Great update for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that feedback. Is there any other questions or concerns or pats on the back, so to speak, as it relates to modernizing this bylaw from the Municipalities Act to the Local Governance Act? So lots more to go, but this is a step in the right direction. Perfect. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. And with that, thank you, DC LeBlanc, for bringing this forward and modernizing that aspect of our suite of bylaws. So we'll move on to, I believe, fire strategy update 9.5. And 9.5, we have our Assistant Deputy Robichaud, who is with us here this evening, and she can bring that fire strategy update to committee. Over to you.
Yes, good afternoon. I'll just take a minute to get my presentation. So this afternoon, I'll be providing an update on the St. John Fire Department strategic plan since our introduction at the Public Safety Committee meeting in May. And so just a reminder, at that time, we had introduced a new mission, vision, and value statements. And so our strategy really does support our vision, mission, and values. We've adopted a clear, concise statement for a vision, which is to be role models in the community and leaders in our profession. And as you'll see with the pillars that we've chosen and the actions, really look to kind of to move this forward with the vision for the department. Our mission, or the why that the department exists, is to protect lives, property, and the environment through effective community risk reduction, preparedness, and emergency response. And finally, our values, or how we achieve the mission and vision. These are central to our actions, which are compassion, professionalism, and integrity. So again, just a reminder, the strategic pillars and priorities that we have identified are our community, service excellence, and our people. And so the plan will really enhance public safety, operational effectiveness, and workforce well-being while providing strategic direction to the department. So I'll take a few moments to go through each of the pillars and some of the actions that we have taken since May. So first, as it relates to our community. So this area includes some key actions in 2025 with a focus really on building resilience in the community and a better understanding of our current risks. So our focus here has really been through an internal community risk assessment, which is underway, as well as a more recent focused community wildfire risk assessment, which has been funded through the province. So these two reports will provide clear data-driven understanding of the hazards facing our community. And these assessments will help identify where the people, property, and critical infrastructure are most vulnerable and will allow us to prioritize our resources more effectively. These assessments will give actionable strategies to help safeguard our community. And in addition to these internal activities, the Regional Public Safety Committee has also engaged a consultant to conduct a regional community risk assessment, which we will also reference as we move forward. Second, and this is really related to our partnerships, which are a key priority that have been identified to strengthen this pillar. So we are working to establish an industrial stakeholder group and have participated in a number of emergency planning exercises, attendance and participation in various meetings, committees, conferences, and training, which allows regular networking and that relationship building with our partners in our region. Next, community engagement, as DC LeBlanc touched on, is an important component of the strategy. In 2025, we focused on raising awareness and promoting fire safety in the community through direct interaction with residents. We had a very successful Fire Prevention Week in October with the theme of battery safety, where we held open houses at all stations in addition to activities in the community. Fire prevention and public education continues to focus on our school programs, with crews participating in the fire drill program with all local schools, and also our grade 3 smokehouse program, which takes place in September. We also continue to promote our Community Connect, which is an online service that allows residents to set up an account and provide information about their property or the residents, which would be accessible to fire crews while responding. We also have some new programs planned for 2026 and continue to work with the Office of the Fire Marshal on required inspection activities. Our next pillar is related to service excellence. And the primary focus in this area will be on establishing service levels or standards of coverage. So many departments of our size would have established service levels which define the type and quality of fire protection and emergency services the community expects. These would be reviewed and adopted by council, and this will allow the department to plan and prioritize the resources more effectively. It will also give benchmarks for our employees to understand the expectations for performance and enables tracking and reporting on service delivery. So we're recommending engaging a specialist in this area, which is Dark Horse Emergency, to assist and provide evidence-based recommendations for council to review in 2026. In addition, we'll also be focusing on asset planning and management, which is also essential to efficient resource allocation and planning. And we'll be conducting internal audits on fleet, which will also tie into the service levels to be established. Next, in relation to organizational performance, this really touches on having better data and information to make decisions. And in 2023, we had Fire Service Review, which provided recommendation on areas to focus on. So based on these recommendations, we have looked at deployment options. Again, we'll be working with consultant to further refine these. We've also introduced a remote piloted aircraft or drone, which has been added to the tools available, which allows remote monitoring, search capabilities, and additional safety for our staff. So our third pillar is our people, recognizing that our people really are our biggest asset. And we've had a number of activities that improve the work environment and promote health and safety for our employees. Health and wellness is central for our first responder staff, with a number of initiatives ongoing, including our cancer screening program. We have a strong peer support team and have incorporated mental health and resiliency training into our orientation programs, as well as training available for all staff. We support and aim to foster an inclusive workplace with participation in corporate training programs and encouraging internal discussions at the crew levels. Also, employee safety, with a focus on updating our procedures and associate training, has really been a focus over the last couple of months. Next, continuing with our people, our priorities here really touching again on training and professional development, our labor relations and recruitment and retention. And so there have been a number of activities under these areas, specifically looking just on the recruitment and retention. We did work closely with Human Resources to review the recruitment process for our Holiday Relief Program, which is our entry-level staff, and made some adjustments based on these recommendations to our recruit that we had this year. So again, continuing to look at continuous improvement and updates to these areas. So just in summary, since our plan was first introduced in May, we had identified 41 actions, with 54 of those, or 54% of those rather, complete, and many continuing into 2026. We do anticipate that we'll have additional items added under each of these pillars as we complete our risk assessments and service level recommendations. So thank you so much for your attention, and this is recommended to be received and filed. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy, for bringing forward that update. And see the recommendation committee.
I'll move that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Reardon. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Killen? Perfect. There we go. Councillor Killen seconded it. All right. Questions from committee to Mr. Robichaud this evening? I see any? All right.
Looks great.
There we go. It's a tremendous amount of work. Thank you, Deputy Chief, for bringing that forward to our attention, and all the work that goes into that, and what the St. John Fire Department does. So we know it's a guiding document, but it also keeps us current, and it's ever changing. So thank you very much for that. I'll call the question. All in favor? There we go. Unanimous. With that, well, motion carried. Move on to 9.6. The St. John Emergency Measures Organization 2025 update, including the ARP update. And I believe it might be Chief Nicol. I've lost my notes on that one.
Good evening, Chair. Yes, that's me on that one, and I can
Lucky guess.
I can promise to keep this one short. I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen.
Can all
Sure.
see that, Chief?
All right. Well, good evening, Chair Norton and members of committee. The purpose of this report really is just an update to public safety. And this fulfills our obligations as part of the Emergency Measures Act, the Municipal Emergency Measures Bylaw, and it gives an opportunity for public and council to have some engagement in the EMO realm. So we'll just kind of briefly touch over some of the contents, and these are parts of our obligation that we're required to report on twice annually. So it's a bit on the Municipal Emergency Response Plan updates and any supplemental plans, and we have a few that I'll go through in this report. A little bit on after action reviews and findings from those exercises, an update on training initiatives, and engagements with industrial stakeholders and emergency management professionals. And also just a quick update on St. John Fire incidents year to date, which can also be found on the St. John website as well. So as I mentioned, the purpose of this is really to fulfill the obligations that we're required to under several acts and bylaws. So moving on to the Municipal Emergency Response Plan, this is something that needs to be updated, several times a year, and we've had the opportunity to kind of go through that and see if there's any changes that need to be made. What we've found is the EMO activation list needs to be updated quite frequently, just because of changes in positions and additional training that people have. So those are done as needed, and just wanted to let committee know that those updates are done and are available for SJEMO members. Also just wanted to identify that we went through all the different risks that are indicated in the Municipal Emergency Response Plan. And going through that, there's a process of looking at the risk and the frequency of what we see. Through that process, it was identified there were three categories really that needed to be adjusted to reflect what our actual experience has been, and it's really, has it happened in the last 5 years? So one is forest fires. It was originally at a risk level of 4, and it has now moved up because of the experience, and certainly what we saw this summer with the extreme drought and heat and experience that we saw across the province. That risk has moved up to 5, which would be a maximum. So it's certainly something that we're working on, and you can see in our fire strat plan that those are being addressed. Floods, ironically, living at the mouth of the St. John River, we've not had significant flooding that's required St. John EMO activation since 2019. So I hesitantly and knock on wood, reduce that risk down from a 5 to a 4. And I guess with the caveat that this is certainly something that we monitor every year. But it's really to reflect the experience that we've not seen a significant flooding since 2019 that's required the activation of St. John EMO. So again, that's something that we'll address each year. And the last one that was adjusted was complex structure fire. And this really, for definition, is, very large buildings, multiple buildings, industrial fires, those types of things. And upon review, we look at our experience, and that's moved from a 4 to a 5 to reflect what we've actually seen. So those are really the major adjustments that have been made in the Municipal Emergency Response Plan. And one of the recommendations at the end of the presentation will be to adopt that. So we'll ask Public Safety to adopt, those revisions to the plan. Just touch briefly on after action reviews. The importance of these are so important, and as professionals in fire service and emergency management realm, it's the importance of the relationships, practicing, working, exercising together is so beneficial, and you really see that. And I guess what I'd offer in a slide further down will kind of give you an example of some of the interactions and exercises that we've had. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on the theme that we get from most of these exercises. And what really resonates is resources and understanding what do we need to respond adequately to certain sites. And that changes, whether it's a port, it's an industrial site, all those things. So it's good conversation to have with the agencies, and we certainly get recommendations of equipment and resources, what we need to do to successfully mitigate any emergency incident that we might have there. Another thing that we found is clarifying expectations has been incredibly important in the after action reviews. What do our partners expect from us, and what do we expect from them? And so just having those discussions and clarification has been helpful, and it helps drive our preparedness and a lot of the agency's emergency preparedness plans. And finally is the importance of continued training. And they're labor intensive, time intensive. It takes a lot of time to plan them and to execute the full scale exercises, but the benefits are immense, and it really does help us when we have a real incident at any of those sites. Moving on, the next piece I wanted to touch on was our activations in 2025, and SJEMO was activated from August 11th to September 8th, and this was in response to the wildfires across the province. Again, knock on wood, luckily, we didn't have any fires that were beyond the capability of the municipality within the city limits. We did have several fires where we had to call in DNR experts, and they give us some advice on suppression tactics. How do we go back to make sure that the fire's out? A lot of the forest fires will burn underground for days, weeks, even months. And so having that expertise from DNR, Department of Natural Resources, is incredible, and they're very helpful in protecting our city. I think to note as well is we did have a request from the province to help in the wildfire just outside of Moncton. And so we did send a crew to support that firefighting effort in Moncton. And again, that was, it's nice to be able to help other areas that are in need, recognizing that, that could be us in the next fire season. So just briefly, these are kind of some of the exercises that we've participated in over or through 2025. It's been multiple hazmat training exercises, engagements with Rail Safety Committee, collaboration with St. John Port, our annual exercise with PLNGS, and working with full-scale exercises for an emergency at the nuclear power plant. A lot of familiarization tours with different industrial partners across the city. I think important to note as well is the collaboration we've had with Regional Public Safety Committee through the FRSC, and also through some of it's the Royal Firefighting Association or the zones. The province is kind of bundled into different zones and responding fire departments. And we've made a concerted effort of really reestablishing relationships with our fire departments that border us, and in establishing mutual aid agreements and helping each other. And it's, we're safer because of it, and so are our outlying communities. A couple other pieces to note, I think, is, we've a lot of engagement with regional public health and emergency partners there. And again, you're getting not just fire and SJEMO, but you're getting emergency responders and emergency management professionals right across the province that are collaborating and working together to increase the safety in the community as well as the province. And the last one I'll touch on is just the Crane Mountain water supply familiarization. It's a great opportunity for wildfire water supply. They have a very extensive pond there and a great water supply source. And we've worked and trained together so that we're able to have an adequate water supply to fight a fire at the landfill, but also if we needed it for wildfire or other areas. So again, it shows that partnership and being able to have resources spread out across not just the St. John Fire Department, but other areas around the city. I won't spend much time on these. These are also on the website, but this kind of shows what our call experience has been to the end of October of this year. This is just a monthly comparison of calls that we've had from 2022 and 2025. It shows you the call volume that we've had. This further breaks it down into call types, whether it's medical, fire alarm, those types of things. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions on these, but I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. I guess this one shows the percentages of the calls. It just breaks down what we've responded to since the first of the year to the end of October. And the last thing before I open it up for any questions is just an update on the unhoused. And again, we've had so much progress and so many people working on such a complex file. Growth has done an incredible job of getting the zones established and support there. And I just wanted to highlight that, as part of the Action for the Housing for All strategy, is that we need to do some additional work for our municipal emergency response plan to really define how do we respond to the unhoused. And again, it's complex and it's changed so much even in this year. But it is something that we have people working on to incorporate how do we help our unhoused population during an emergency. So that work is ongoing, and we'll have more updates as we kind of finalize that. And again, I would offer it's complex and very dynamic file. It changes almost daily depending on where the encampments are and where people move. So just wanted to kind of put that on everyone's radar, that is something that your SJEMO team is working on to make sure that population is protected as well. So again, recommendations, I guess there's two. It's that the update is a receive and file, but also that the Public Safety Committee adopt the municipal emergency response plan revisions as presented, and that was with respect to the hazards. The wildfire, the flood, and the complex structure fires.
Excellent. Committee, you see the two recommendations there at the end.
I'll move those.
Second.
Perfect. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions for either the Assistant Deputy Robichaud or Chief Nickel himself, who's here this evening as it relates to this? Perfect. Over to you, Mayor.
Just quickly, I wanted to say that there's a lot of great information there, Chief, and really appreciate it. And you said it's on the website, so that's all great as well. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Very good.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions or
Kevin.
comments?
No.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Chief, for the data sets that are included in there and the complex work that you do. And work with some dynamic situations, but also a dynamic team. So thank you for the report. And with that, I would call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Yes, there we go. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. All right. I don't see any other outstanding items. I believe that brings us right to the end of our agenda.
Move adjournment.
Yeah, there we go. Without Councillor Lowe being here, I don't know who the token individual is for that, but I call for an adjournment if anyone would like to move that.
Mayor did. I'm seconding.
There we go. All right. There we go. All in favor? I don't see anybody asking to stay. So thank you very much, everybody. And
Good night.
obviously to our great staff for all the work that they did for presenting this evening. Have a great evening.
Thanks,